Hi, I'm Julie Stark, and this is Reflections, where we explore the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. Today we have the perfect guest, Judith Stevens. Judith has been a master of Edgar Cayce's work for over 45 years. She's worked with the A.R.E. for over 2 decades, and she comes to us with a wealth of information. I'm excited to talk to her, and I'm sure you're going to be excited to hear it. Judith, thanks for joining us on the A.R.E. stage today, someplace you're very familiar with.
Very happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So you and I have decided that we are going to talk about something that makes perfect sense for the new year, transformation and renewal, and also something that Cayce based his entire organization on and the purpose of it, to help people transform their lives for the better. And in fact, I think it's worth mentioning the mission statement of the organization specifically is to create opportunities for profound personal change in body, mind, and spirit through the wisdom found in the Cayce material. So while there are many ways to transform our lives, I think Cayce had some particular ideas about what that might look like. And because you are a master in these 14,000 plus readings, I'm really happy to talk to you about this subject today. You and I had talked a little bit about some of these core principles, and one of the things that you said to me right out of the gate, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is that Cayce believed that acceptance was the first principle of spiritual awareness or law, spiritual law, the first principle of spiritual law. Can you expand upon that and tell us what his feelings were?
Well, I can tell you that when A.R.E. was our treasurer many years ago, he talked about a simple prayer that we should all do called Thank You, Father. And he said that we would use it no matter what happened. So when the good things happen, it's easy to say, Thank you, Father. But when the challenging situations, such as you were describing to me, happened on your way to work this morning,
right,
it's a little bit harder to say, Thank you, Father, and mean it. But of course, that's the trick. We have to mean it. And Mr. Cayce, I think, felt that whatever was in front of us was what we were supposed to be experiencing, and that it was up to us to accept it, the responsibility for it, and as the old expression goes, make lemonade out of lemons if you get them.
Right. And so this doesn't necessarily mean agree or condone or feel good about. It just means looking at the situation and the reality of what is.
It does, and it means asking, what is the lesson in this? That's what this material has taught me all these years, that when something happens, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm always asking inwardly, what am I supposed to learn from this? What is the lesson in this experience? And you'll always find an answer.
Because it is always, there is a purpose in everything that happens, but sometimes you have to look for that purpose. It's not obvious to what's happening. But this idea of acceptance, I think, is really fundamental if you are serious about personal transformation, because I don't think you can really get to the next thing, kind of like we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yes.
If you don't have safety, security, food, shelter, your basic needs, you can't get to self-actualization, much less community or belonging or self-esteem. So this idea that just start where I am right now, accept the reality of what is like the point of where you need to be before you can start on that journey of transformation. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. I think that's it exactly. And also, I think that this work is a template for transformation. I think Mr. Cayce gave the main universal principles that we could all work with wherever we were. And then we would move to the next step, and we continue working those laws, and you're moved to the next step and the next step.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like Mr. Cayce over 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago, and put this work out into the world. And now we see contemporary authors and philosophers and neuroscientists even
Yeah.
supporting the work that he had done so long ago.
The verification is everywhere. I
Right.
mean, not too long ago, we realized that a reading he had given in 1920s that talked about one day being able to take a drop of blood from the human body and be able to diagnose the conditions of that person. Well, this was before that was ever thought of or dreamed of, and yet Mr. Cayce just matter-of-factly stated it during one of the readings. And more we're finding that the medical community is coming closer and closer to whatever we call religion, which this certainly is not, but we know that all roads lead home. So Mr. Cayce had a way of speaking to everyone in their language so that they understood it and could use the material.
It's absolutely masterful. I really, when you look at his readings and you look at some of the contemporary authors, for instance, we're both familiar with Eckhart Tolle
Yes.
and his writings in A New Earth and The Power of Now, and he spoke about acceptance and said that, you know, anytime we resist is when suffering comes, and that if we accept what is, all drama leaves our lives.
That's
Now,
right.
I think we'd all, like this morning, I had to get into a real place of acceptance so that drama would carry itself right on out the door. But he also said, Tolle said in his book, a little bit of a spoiler alert, is at the end, he said that awakened doing has to have one of these three components: acceptance, enthusiasm, or enjoyment. And I think that work, it really corresponds to Cayce's work, you know, beautifully.
There's so many parallels, and I'm hearing and reading. Anything I pick up, it's almost like I'm reading a version of the readings. People have come to the same realizations. They may be presenting in a slightly different way, but it's again that idea of all roads lead home.
Right.
I know when Hugh Lin took a tour to Tibet years ago, they met with the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama was so interested in the work of Edgar Cayce and knew about it. And they were talking along the same lines. Then they went a little further and they went to the Carmelites, you know, they went to the monasteries of the Essenes, and they found similar material. So it's there.
I love it, and it's kind of like that idea that all that energy of thought is all over the world, and as it passes you, you know, grab it. So
Yeah.
as this conversation is passing you, grab it, right?
Yes.
So in our conversations and looking at keys to personal transformation, we know that acceptance is a key, but Cayce also thought one of the most powerful tools for transformation was forgiveness. And that's a really tough thing for people. Now, we talked about acceptance, meaning you don't have to condone or agree with the situation at hand. Much can be said about forgiveness. You know, you don't have to, you know, invite someone over for dinner, but the idea of forgiveness is really vital to personal transformation. And in fact, I do also think Cayce said that a lot of people who came to him ill were holding on to resentments. So give us an idea about Cayce's basis for personal transformation through the lens of forgiveness.
Well, he actually gave a prayer called the Prayer of Loving Indifference for people who are having challenging relationships. I've used it myself over the years. I've taught it to all of my yoga students. They all say that it works. It's simply, you take the name of the person and you say, this person is yours, even as I am yours. Do that, which will bring peace and harmony between us. And it only takes a moment to do that. But if you do it from the heart, that relationship changes. And then, of course, if you do it repeatedly, it gets even better. And Mr. Cayce actually gave, or rather, again, A.R.E. Gave this idea of a 40-day forgiveness prayer, which is on our website that people can download, and we'll be happy to send a copy of this to anyone who wants it. But he suggested that we take the person's name, you actually put it in the prayer, and the wording is there, and then your name. So you're not only forgiving the other person, you are forgiving yourself. And you may say, wait a minute, I didn't do anything. Well, I think we could all use a little forgiveness now and then, don't you?
Well, and Cayce said that as well. You know, forgive others, but also forgive self.
Exactly.
And don't condemn others, and don't condemn yourself.
Precisely.
Right?
Yes.
And it's sort of this idea of, you know, shared humanity, like seeing the humanity in each other.
The God in me greets and acknowledges the God in you.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Robert Enright is a professor at University of Wisconsin, and he is actually the founder of the International Forgiveness Institute.
Wonderful.
Beautiful, right? And he also says what Cayce says, that forgiveness is essential to heal our wounds. So I think a lot of wounds that we carry around, which can hinder our personal transformation greatly, could be solved by practicing forgiveness. And again, we're not saying invite someone to your dinner table or you have to be in their presence even, but just the idea of letting all of that go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when you let that go, it makes room in you for something new to come and take up habitation. And what I was going to say is that the small group program that we have here, that's all around the world, talks about this forgiveness principle in most of the chapters. And many of us have taken as a discipline, a weekly discipline, to forgive someone, either passed on, someone who hurt us, and is not even with us anymore but is in another state, to pray for that person and forgive them, or someone in our family, relationship, work circle, neighbor, friend, whomever. And it's made great giant strides in people's lives. They say they feel lighter once they get over the hump of that, whatever they're holding on to or whatever the other person seems to be holding on to. It melts and there's room to grow.
That's so beautiful. You know, I think I heard Oprah Winfrey say one time that forgiveness was giving up the hope that the past could be any different than it was.
That's beautiful.
Right?
Yes.
That just kind of sat with me. I've got chills right now repeating that. It just kind of sat with me like, yeah, right? I mean, and here we are back to accept, all roads lead to acceptance, right? Because here we are like, accept the past and what's happened. And you know, in the world of neuroscience, they've done some studies where if you even think about forgiveness, the same neurocircuitry lights up and is active that corresponds with empathy.
Well, you know, Mr. Cayce said so often, thoughts are things. When we begin to think about the person who hurt us differently, when we realize that perhaps they didn't have any training, nobody showed them how to be, they had to learn on their own, we can realize that we can forgive them. That's the first step to loving them. And then, you know, the old forgive and forget. People say, I can forgive, but I'm not going to forget.
Right.
But this helps you in the forgetting process as well.
Because it's really just move along.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And here we are back to that shared humanity again. You know, I've often said that the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the gift of empathy and the ability to put ourselves in another's shoes.
Yes.
And the greatest gift we can give the world is the gift of self-awareness and why we do what we do.
Yeah.
That those are two really great gifts. And I think that having acceptance and forgiveness as foundational elements for personal transformation are sort of keys to leading you to something that was, that I think was at the core of some of Edgar Cayce's teachings, and that is to be of service and a channel of blessings for others.
Yes.
Right?
There's a reading that simply says, others, Lord, others. And of course, that was one of the tenets that was shown in the earth plane through Jesus, the Christ.
Say that again. What was the quote? Others?
Others, Lord, others.
Others, Lord,
That's
others.
It. Yeah.
You know, in some of his readings, I noticed that whenever he would say this phrase, it was always in all caps. And so I could hear him just like saying, this is like really important, right? And it was, I am my brother's keeper, right?
Yes.
That idea. Again, that you don't have to be a doormat and, lay down or create codependent or unhealthy relationships, but this idea that we are responsible for one another.
We are,
right?
Because we know that if we think the kind of thoughts that will help to lift another individual a little closer to the light,
right,
that eventually the whole world can come into that and be a part of that. And that, I think, is part of our mission here. We're getting this information out to let people know you can, in your own small way, begin the transformation, not only of your life, but of the larger world.
Right.
We can all help lift the world into the light if we're willing to do the work. And that's what Mr. Cayce said too. We can do whatever we want to do as long as we're willing to roll up our sleeves and do the work on ourselves.
And do the work. The golden rule, which he referenced often,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Treat others as you would be treated. And Penny, the guy who started J.C. Penney's, his first store was called the Golden Rule Store.
Wow.
In 1902.
And did you know that Lord and Taylor's was named after God, Lord and Mr. Taylor?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. That's
so
great.
Some people have invited that energy into their lives.
Right.
And look how they have prospered.
Right. Well, it's not a bad way for us to live our lives every day.
No.
Right?
And I wanted to say that some of the people in the small groups, they take this service concept very seriously, and we do service projects within the groups, and that might be as simple as buying books for someone that we know who has a lot of children and can't afford what they need for school supplies. It could also be like a Phoenix group has adopted a homeless shelter. Every Saturday they make sandwiches and go down to the homeless shelter and they feed the homeless because they feel that not only has this work helped them and they want to share it, but they feel like they have to do something in terms of service to others.
Right.
So there are wonderful original service projects going on around the world instituted by people in A.R.E. Search for God study groups.
That's beautiful because, if we step outside of ourselves, those things that we think are so problematic really become quite insignificant in the scheme of things, don't they? And I think that a lot of times when people think of being of service, they think that it has to be some magnanimous gesture or something really big, or even to get involved with the group, which is a wonderful way to experience that. But it can also show up in just little ways, as you were mentioning earlier,
yes,
just uplifting someone, some kind words to someone, complimenting. How many times do we think about, like, wow, I thought, Judith, your hair looks nice, or that color looks great on you. And I thought it and I didn't say it. But wouldn't it have been a service for me to say, by the way, and I'm saying, Judith, that color looks great on you.
Thank you.
Right? So there are small ways that we can be of service and uplift, as well as the large ways, which I think, serving those that are less fortunate are certainly.
And again, using some of the discipline ideas or experiments that we do in the small groups, those are the kinds of things we take out from our group meeting into the world, at work, at home, people that we meet on the streets. I know people who, when they go shopping, try to cheer up the person at the cash register because that person's been working all day and is probably really tired and ready to go home.
Right.
And so making an effort to say, how was your day? And try to lift their spirits. Just a smile. Mr. Cayce said in a reading that you never know what your smiles are going to do. They could change the course of a person's life. You're giving a smile at a moment when it's truly needed by the other person.
And how powerful are we as just these little beings walking around that we could do that.
Exactly.
There's a former pastor by the name of Rob Bell who calls it the crab bucket. The story of, if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket and one tries to escape, all the other crabs will reach up and pull his little crab leg and throw him back down into the bucket, right? And he says that the crab who is trying to get out of we should be lifting him up, and while you're coming out of that bucket, just reach your little crab leg down and grab another crab and pull him with you out of that bucket, right?
That's right.
So it's kind of like that. Mark Thurston, who is highly involved with the A.R.E. in a number of ways, wrote an article in Venture Inward recently where he was talking about a reading that Cayce did for a woman and she was talking about how could she be of service, right? In her little life that may have been insignificant to her, but she was very curious. And Cayce gave her 2 pieces of advice. The first was to look at life from a wider perspective, that our daily lives are but shadows of our soul life, right? So to not get so just granular about our daily lives, that we could really have a wider perspective and find many, many ways to be of service. And also to not compartmentalize life. So it seems like it's 2 sides of the same coin, but that idea to not compartmentalize, in that we are all connected. We are all one.
Yes.
Right? Everything that we do affects the other.
Well, you know, in the World Affairs readings, Mr. Cayce told the prayer group that if 25 people prayed, they could avert the war. This is when it was starting, and it was just incredible. We tracked down some of the people who were still living when I came here in '68 and asked them, did they do it? Did they do it? They didn't do it. They did not do it. So who knows what might have happened if they had done it. And you said earlier that people think they have to do grandiose things. They don't. We have 2 people that I know of. One is invalided, and she prays with the Glad Helpers prayer group for the list of names every day from her hospital bed at home. There's another gentleman I talked to last week who is on a limited income and who is has some challenges, physical challenges, but he's been praying with the prayer group since the 1970s. He has never missed a day where he has prayed with the prayer group.
Wow.
And you think there's nothing you can do, there's always something you can do to uplift others.
Those are beautiful examples, really. And you know, Judith, I have to say, in your work, you have been, studying the works of Cayce for nearly 45 years and working with his material in this organization for well over 2 decades.
Yes.
And so the work that you're doing in the world and the changes that you're making, the personal transformations that people are experiencing under your tutelage are such a gift. So thank you for being that to this organization and for all those people.
I just feel so grateful that I found my way here and that the work spoke to me and that I recognized it, that I feel that I need to be here to bring it forth to anybody else who could use it in the same way. It made me a much better parent, raising my son as a single mom. It made me, I hope, a better friend, I was a Baptist at the time, I'm now a Quaker, but it made me a better Baptist, a better Quaker. Mr. Cayce said, if this work doesn't make you a better friend, husband, daughter, child, whatever, leave it alone. And if it does, go forward.
Embrace it. That's beautiful. How can we top that? That is beautiful. Well, you do have ways that people can learn more about this, talk more about these subjects of personal transformation. You want to tell us a little bit about how they can do that? Okay.
I would like people to go to our wonderful website and go to the study group section, and you can find the map there and see where there's a study group near you if you're interested, and then contact that person. We also have this small booklet, Edgar Cayce's Meditation for Everyone, which I would be so happy to send anyone who would like a free copy. If you will just call me here at A.R.E., and the number is area code 757-457-7237, or email me at judith.stevens, S-T-E-V, like Virginia, E-N-S, at edgarcayce.com.
Oh,
.org. Sorry.
.org, edgarcayce.org.
Yes.
You are such a delight. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've enjoyed meeting you and talking to you, and I will be learning more from you about Edgar Cayce as we go on.
It has been great fun and my pleasure.
All right,
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.